If you're accusing me of stealing your electricity, I'll have you know I'm the president of this community, she snapped. I could have your tools seized for unauthorized repairs. I held her gaze for 3 seconds, then said, Marilyn, that orange cord isn't exactly invisible. She didn't blink, just yelled about harassment and stormed off, already dialing her cousin, the HOA's so-called security consultant. Picture this. You're just trying to live your life, enjoying your home, when suddenly you find yourself in a battle with the local HOA, specifically one person who seems to have taken it upon herself to make your life a living nightmare. It was 2:13 a.m. when a scream tore through the stillness of Willow Grove, followed by a deafening blast that could have been mistaken for a freighter's foghorn erupting in someone's front yard. Lights flickered on up and down the block. Dogs howled in disarray. A baby began crying in the distance. I noticed my outdoor power outlet was being used more frequently than I remembered. At first, I brushed it off, thinking maybe I had forgotten to unplug something. But soon it became clear that someone was using my electricity to power their outdoor lights and gadgets, without so much as a "by your leave." And there stood my neighbor Marilyn, tangled in an orange extension cord, her silk bathrobe flapping open like a wind-tossed flag as she shrieked like a banshee, mascara smeared and one slipper lost to the rose bushes. I sat on my porch, cradling a warm mug of black coffee in my hands. A grin crept across my face, slow and satisfied. This wasn't just revenge. After countless polite requests to stop, I realized that traditional methods of conflict resolution were getting me nowhere. It was justice, wired with precision, built with pride, and timed to perfection. But to understand how I got here, you need to go back 3 weeks, back to when it all began with a flicker. And no, not some poetic metaphor. I mean a literal flicker. I was watching a grainy World War II documentary, narrated in that raspy old-school tone, when my TV glitched, blinked off, and rebooted itself. Annoying, sure. I figured maybe the circuit had overloaded. The next day, my garage light, fitted with a brand new LED bulb, flickered and went dead. Then the deep freezer, my pride and joy, packed with $200 worth of perfectly portioned steaks, burgers, and pork roasts, started to thaw. I ran diagnostics, nothing internal. My power tools sputtered during a project, whining like they'd been cursed. As a retired Navy electrician with 30 years of experience taming high-voltage systems aboard destroyers, I knew what I was looking at wasn't random. This wasn't a surge. It wasn't faulty wiring. Something or someone was messing with my power. And I don't take kindly to sabotage, so I got to work. I crawled through the attic, pulled panel covers, and ran a clamp meter on every line. Then I found it, a steady parasitic draw, pumping juice from my main line. It wasn't coming from my house. It was flowing underground, straight toward Marilyn's property next door. I traced it physically. A suspiciously fresh patch of dirt snaked through the bushes between our homes. Shallow, sloppy. Not the work of a pro. Someone had buried a line, and I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly who. Marilyn Miller, our HOA president and self-appointed dictator. She ran Willow Grove like a tight-lipped tyrant. She once fined a veteran for displaying an American flag without prior approval, cited an old widow for planting sunflowers, not within HOA-approved colors, and tried to outlaw wind chimes because they interfered with neighborhood harmony. She carried a clipboard like a badge of honor, always patrolling with a smug smile and an eye for violations. I'd managed to stay off her radar, mostly because I didn't flinch when she flexed her little HOA rulebook. But this was different. This was her crossing into my electrical territory. I waited until one of her morning patrols when she shuffled by in her perfectly pressed pantsuit, sipping a matcha smoothie through a biodegradable straw. I stood by my front hedge and casually said, Interesting new landscaping between our houses, Marilyn. That extension cord running from my box into your garage must have been a pain to dig in. She stopped mid-step. Her lips tightened like she'd sucked a lemon. If you're accusing me of stealing your electricity, I'll have you know I'm the president of this community, she snapped. I looked at her with a smirk. Didn't say anything about stealing, just noticed it wasn't very well hidden. I could have your tools seized for unauthorized home modifications. She snapped louder, now red-faced and trembling. I gave her a long, slow, 3-second stare. Marilyn, that orange cord isn't exactly invisible. She didn't blink, just turned sharply and stormed off, dialing someone on her phone as she walked. Eddie, get your gear. He knows. Eddie, her cousin, the HOA's so-called security consultant. He wore a badge he printed at Staples and once tried to declare my dog a potential threat for barking at squirrels. That night, I hid a trail cam in the hedges. 2 nights later, just after 2 a.m., it caught him, crawling like a raccoon in a fake security vest, flashlight in hand, fiddling with the wiring like he was defusing a bomb. I had him on video, clear as day, messing with the buried line that led into Marilyn's garage. And instead of calling the cops right away, I decided to speak Marilyn's language. Overkill. I researched how to safely rewire my outdoor outlet to connect it to the Airhorn mechanism. I gathered my tools, including a power drill, some wiring, and of course, the Airhorn itself. I called in 2 of my old Navy buddies, Frankie and Gerald, retired electricians like me, with a flair for mischief. Over burgers in my yard, we built a bypass detector rigged to a marine-grade Airhorn array. Instead of letting Marilyn continue her power theft, I rewired my outdoor outlet to blast an air horn every time she plugged in. Hidden behind my shrubs and aimed squarely at her garage, the horns were the kind used on freighters to warn vessels in heavy fog. Loud enough to rattle fillings, we wired the system so that when it detected unauthorized power draw, it would close the circuit and fire all 4 horns. To bait them, I faked a decommission notice on my outdoor panel, laminated and official looking. Solar upgrade pending, it read, complete with warning stickers and a fake contractor logo. The decoy box was painted to look abandoned. 2 nights later, 2 a.m. sharp, my motion sensor pinged. I watched from the porch, sipping coffee. Eddie appeared with a toolkit and headlamp, confident. The moment he tapped into the line, Bwah! The air horns roared like Armageddon. Lights flared. A siren wailed from Marilyn's own house. I imagined Marilyn's face when she plugged in her extension cord, only to be met with a blast that could wake up anyone. It was a way to turn the tables on her antics and inject some fun into an otherwise frustrating situation. She burst out the front door in a panic, arms flailing, tripping over solar lights and screaming at Eddie, who bolted into a bird bath. Neighbors peeked from windows. One guy yelled, "Are we under attack?" I muttered into my coffee, "That's what a surge sounds like, Marilyn." I couldn't help but chuckle at the sheer absurdity of it all. Neighbors who were outside gardening or walking their dogs stopped in their tracks, their heads snapping toward my yard with a mix of shock and amusement. Laughter erupted from a few of them, and I could hear whispers of, "Did that really just happen?" It was a moment of pure joy, and I felt a sense of companionship with my neighbors, who were finally witnessing the absurdity of the situation. However, not everyone found the air horn as entertaining as I did. Shortly after the first blast, I received a call from the HOM. They were not pleased. Apparently, the noise had drawn complaints from a few residents who claimed it was disruptive. The HOA representative informed me that while they understood my frustration with Marilyn, they couldn't condone the use of excessive noise devices. I couldn't help but chuckle at the irony. Here I was trying to reclaim my power, and the HOA was more concerned about the sound than the theft itself. By noon, the retaliation arrived. An envelope from the HOA with 3 violation notices: tampering with property lines, illegal electrical modifications, and hazardous noise disturbances. Marilyn had declared war. I didn't react. Not yet. I knew how she played. But I also knew how to win, by being right on paper. Despite the HOA's complaints, I was pleasantly surprised by the unexpected support from the community. Many neighbors approached me, expressing their solidarity and even sharing their own stories of HOA frustrations. It turned out that my Airhorn escapade had not only resolved my issue, but also sparked a sense of unity among residents. What started as a personal conflict transformed into a community conversation, and I couldn't have been happier with the outcome. I pored over the HOA bylaws. My garage became a war room. We built a fake control panel with blinking lights that did absolutely nothing, but looked dangerously technical. Marilyn started taking photos from her SUV, binoculars glinting. I left a binder labeled Neighborhood Surveillance Logs on my patio, filled with chili recipes and mower maintenance notes. She pawed through it during a routine inspection, her hands trembling with paranoia. At the next HOA meeting, she came unglued, waving a stack of blurry photos and yelling about military-grade retaliation. She accused me of sonic terrorism, called me a domestic saboteur. But her credibility was crumbling. Years of cracking down on pink flamingos and unauthorized gnomes had worn her thin. Then I stood. Calmly, I showed the board my footage, Eddie tampering with my lines, diagrams, amp readings, timestamps. I spoke clearly. This isn't about an air horn, it's about theft. It's about mistreatment of power. Marilyn used her title to bully and steal from us. The room went silent. Then neighbors spoke. Tom, whose generator Eddie snooped around. Linda, who was coerced into giving Marilyn access to her backyard outlet. A few even confessed they'd been afraid to speak until now. Marilyn stood and exploded, accusing everyone of betrayal. "You weren't supposed to get caught," she screamed at Eddie. Then came the final blow. A board member revealed budget discrepancies, cash withdrawals for security upgrades tied to Eddie's fake invoices. Marilyn lunged for the papers. The board voted to remove her, nearly unanimous. She was escorted out, still yelling about inflatable pools and communist lawn decor. But it didn't end there. 3 days later, I received a cease and desist letter from a law firm, Marilyn claiming emotional trauma, public shaming, and noise assault. She demanded $25,000 in a written apology. I laughed. Then I called my attorney Alonzo, who reviewed the footage and documentation. His verdict: she just stepped into a legal bear trap. And then the real reckoning came. The power company, tipped off by my report, conducted a sweep. They found multiple illegal bypasses, one at the HOA clubhouse, another under a decorative fountain, adding up to $15,000 in stolen electricity. Charges were filed. Marilyn was officially under investigation for utility theft and fraud. Eddie, now sweating and desperate, showed up at my door with a box of pastries and an envelope of texts and receipts, proof that Marilyn masterminded everything. He cried and offered a sworn statement. Her lawsuit against me was dismissed. Her house went on the market, a once pristine listing with a now infamous address. No one made an offer without smirking. In the aftermath, the neighborhood changed. The board elected new members. Transparency became policy. Misused funds were returned. String lights reappeared. Lawn gnomes flourished. Laughter returned. Marilyn's former house was sold to Ellen and Mark, a young couple with a golden retriever named Scout, who won everyone over in a week. They brought over a peach cobbler and asked about joining the community garden. It was like spring came early. My Airhorn rig now sits in my garage, cradled like a war trophy, not to be used again unless someone decides to run another cord through my bushes. Instead of resorting to anger or frustration, I chose to think outside the box and come up with a humorous solution. The air horn not only resolved my issue, but also turned a frustrating situation into a memorable moment for my entire neighborhood. It's a reminder that sometimes a little creativity can go a long way in tackling even the most annoying problems. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button if you found the story entertaining, and share it with your friends who might need a good laugh or some inspiration for their own neighborhood disputes. Your support helps us create more engaging and humorous content that tackles the ups and downs of community living. Thank you for watching Work Story, and see you in the next one.